Today I'm joined by Matthew Taylor, who has got a very interesting career as a player and as a manager. Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
No worries. So do you want to start us off then with your early days playing football? Who actually got you into the game?
Oh, all family related, as always. When you're a young child, you copy what your older brother does. You follow your parents' lead. I had a grandfather who was a professional footballer. My uncle played professional football, so it was in the blood, so to speak. And in the back garden and in the backyard, just as much time as we possibly could playing football. Then you go into certain systems and structures, whether it's Cubs or the local club team. And then I was lucky enough to play for a professional club as a young boy up until the age of 16. So in and around the professional game, albeit at a younger age group, and just getting a feel for where football was going, and obviously into non-league after that. So definitely a family-related affair.
You started off as a goalkeeper. How did that one come about? Because that is always, you either start up top or at the back. So you started at the back. So what was the story behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, really. I played as a goalkeeper for my age group, but I played outfield for the older age group. So I always did both. I think the goalkeeper was, I just mentioned my older brother. You know, when there's two of us in the backyard, then I'm always going to go in nets as the younger, weaker one, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's where that started, and I was obviously talented at a young age. So I played as a goalkeeper for my age group, but I actually played as an outfield player for the older team, which is a better standard of football, all from sort of 10 years of age up until I was 16. And then there was obviously the time when semi-professional football started coming into it at Burscough Football Club, and I got my first opportunity as a goalkeeper, playing alongside the semi-pro lifestyle. I went to college and university and managed to carry on playing as an outfield player, as a centre half at college and at university, and luckily through England universities and getting selected for them, I got my opportunity down at Team Bath as a centre half. So it wasn't as big a change as what people imagine when people read about, Wikipedia and say, oh, you started out as a goalkeeper. During my time as a non-league goalkeeper, I always played outfield as well.
You went to Everton under 17s at the time of you being around that age. To be in a Premier League academy, what was that like? Did you ever feel the pressure? Because obviously you were at Preston just before.
Yeah, well, actually, I got released at 16 from Preston. I didn't get a YTS because I was too small as a goalkeeper. And ironically, by the time I'd got to college the following summer, I was over 6 foot. So I had a real growth spurt a little bit too late for my goalkeeping days. And actually, my time at Everton was quite short. It was there, like you say, their under-17s team. And I think they'd released their goalkeeper and needed a local goalkeeper almost to fill a spot for a few months. So it was great. I ended up playing a few games for them. I was at college at the time, so I didn't train every single day. But when I did go into train with Everton, either with their 17s, 18s, or even their 21s, I never got close to the first team, unfortunately. Just great experience because you just see another level to the game, especially when you're in the non-league circuit or the college standard of the game, to be around people who are playing every single day. Speed of mind, speed of body, how quickly they play and how physical they are was a real eye-opener. But like I say, I would have liked it to be for longer, but it was a short period, but a great experience.
You mentioned Burscough, and obviously you played with your brother there. You won a trophy while you were there. In that environment, obviously not being the Premier League, you're in a semi-professional league. What was that like to balance everything? Because obviously you were pretty young at the age, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, even before my brother started playing for Burscough, I made my debut for Burscough at 18 as a goalkeeper. Wet behind the ears, going into a change room full of tough men and body-hardened men, and where 3 points was important, and people's jobs were on the line. It was great, a great experience. Really sort of toughened me up, and was a real eye opener for the future and my obviously career I've had. But then when my brother joined alongside, Sean Teal came in as player manager. And that season where we had the success of the FA Trophy win at Villa Park was it was a fairy tale, unheard of in terms of a team of Burscough's level going on to win the FA Trophy, which is a non-league equivalent of the FA Cup. I suppose it'd be like a League One team winning the FA Cup. Absolutely incredible. But we managed to do it somehow, and the fact that I was a goalkeeper and my brother was playing centre half in front of me made it all the more sweeter for the family.
Well, exactly. I was going to mention your family. They must have been delighted. Obviously, it was on TV as well. What was the celebrations like after you won the game?
Oh, fantastic. Went on for days. And because it was such a big achievement, we both went to school in Burscough. We lived 5 minutes away in Barbauld, community club, a club we hadn't really had success before then, or certainly since then as well. So, for Lancashire, it was a big deal, and certainly for Burscough Football Club. So, absolutely fantastic celebrations. I can't remember, we went on to one of these holiday resorts as a team. The club somehow paid for that, which wasn't a big sum of money back then, but you can imagine the celebrations there. Yeah, and we lived a certain lifestyle for a few weeks, and also probably a few of us who performed well in that cut run got trials in the professional game after that, and came close to professional game. When I was 21 at the time, my brother was 23. But just great to achieve something with people who you're close to.
Well, you did go on trial to Lincoln. Again, what was that like? I'm sure you were so eager to now push into a professional club, and I'm sure you must have felt the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel the pressure. I have to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, it's different when you go in on trial when you're coming from a non-league background, and I just saw it as an opportunity. And luckily, Keith Alexander was there at Lincoln, a fantastic man, great manager. I did pre-season with Lincoln, and they actually offered me a contract. But because I was under 24 at Burscough, despite being out of contract, they were asking for a fee, which unfortunately at that time Lincoln had no money, so couldn't pay. So it kind of petered out that opportunity. Real shame because almost a sliding doors moment. I would have been a professional goalkeeper at a League Two club, and I don't know where my career would have gone from there on forth. But yeah, I see it as certainly not a missed opportunity, but one of those moments which like goes against you. You always need luck on your side at times. So yeah, I had that opportunity at Lincoln, and I went to Morecambe, and the same thing happened. For whatever reason. Burscough wanted a fee or some finances in return, and that didn't happen. But I ended up leaving Burscough at the end of that season anyway and going off to university. So it could have been a lot different. I could have been sat here talking to you, having had a career as a goalkeeper in the Football League, but wasn't to be.
In terms of university, what did you actually study?
I studied sport development and coaching. Look, I have to be honest, I was never great at studying. It was always sport, whether it be football or cricket. I did okay at A levels at college, distractions in terms of football and other things. But I had a couple of years out playing non-league and working local bars, restaurants, waiting on Debenhams coffee shop and garden centres. I did a lot of different jobs. Never held many down for long enough. And it was my mum's idea. She knew I was probably drifting in terms of where my life was at that stage. And we had a conversation, and I actually went through the clearing process for the university application. So it was a late decision. And it was the best decision I ever made because it gave me a bit of structure. Anyone who's been to university knows how much fun you have at university. I was a little bit older, so I was a bit more experienced. And I was also able to play non-league football in around Yorkshire and in around Sheffield. So I was getting a little bit of money in my back pocket and play university football as well. So I had 3 fantastic years at Sheffield. All the lads on my course and all my housemates went on to become PE teachers. So I suppose if I wanted to do a PGC at some stage, I could become a PE teacher in the space of a year. But I was lucky at the end of that 3 years at university, involving England universities as well. I got the opportunity down at Team Bath.
I have to say though, a lot of goalkeepers seem to like cricket, and I'm not a big fan of cricket, you see, but it seems to me that a lot of goalkeepers like the game. Is there a reason as to why or not?
Probably hand-eye coordination. That's the only one I could give you. Yeah, naturally, it was something that we did growing up, and I was good with my hands, bowling, catching, fielding. I wasn't a wicket keeper. I bowled and batted. But yeah, I understand that correlation in terms of goalkeepers and cricket. But yeah, those are the 2 sports. We were good at other sports, but if we were going to have a professional career, both myself and my brother, it would have been through cricket or football.
You went to Matlock Town, and I believe you found a bit of a home there. You were under your uncle's, I believe, Neil at the time there. So what was that like to be at the club at Matlock Town?
Well, my uncle Neil, he lived local, so they could sort of come and watch. Ernie Moss was the manager, so a Chesterfield legend for any Chesterfield fans out there. We had a really good season at Matlock because I joined university in September. I only signed for him in September, but I ended up getting player of the season, supported player of the season. I think we won the Derbyshire Senior Cup, beating Burton. So yeah, a really good season. And then Ernie Moss went on to Hucknall and took me with him. So the non-league circuit is a strange circuit. I actually took my wife and my children back to Matlock for a day out the other day, and we visited the ground. I'd not been there for 24 years, but the memories I had were all fond memories of that place, and also the people as well. You always get that feel for small clubs and non-league clubs. It's about the people, and the people at Matlock were excellent with me. So yeah, we had a really good season.
You mentioned though that the non-league circuit is wacky and wonderful, I suppose, because a lot of players seems to go to loads of different clubs. So Hucknall Town, what was that like to be there? Again, you managed to work alongside your brother there as well.
Yeah, we both signed. Started off really well, but then Ernie Moss got sacked, and unfortunately, then in terms of my season at Hucknall, I had an ankle operation in the first half of the season, and a knee operation in the second half of the season. So I barely played. I played the first probably third of the season, and then through injury didn't feature after that. And it was a real shame because in the non-league scene and the non-league circuit, when injuries come and operations happen, it's who funds it, and unfortunately I had to pay for those operations myself. So Hucknall was probably a bigger club than Matlock, and financially quite well backed at the time. And great to play with my brother again, but I think we both suffered too many injuries that season.
I was going to ask you that question, so you basically answered it for me. But for you to fund your own operations, there's nothing from the club. Did you ever hear that you'd play for them again? What was the talking like with them?
Well, I mean, it was complicated. It was a long time ago. They paid for the first operation, but then the second operation they refused to pay for it, which was a shame at the time. But contracts at non-league level aren't the same as a professional level, and it was a lot of money to get the surgery, which I needed back then. So it was a decision I wanted to make, and through leaving the club, it allowed me to get the operation which I needed, and then hopefully be fit to sign for someone the following season. But that's just part and parcel of that learning curve, that experience I went through. Probably toughened me up, which we've spoke about in terms of my mentality, and also made me more hungry to succeed when I got the opportunity later down the line.
You probably were not thinking to get an opportunity at Halifax because you joined them so late into the season. Was that just to get fit back into a semi-pro professional environment?
Yeah, that Halifax had watched me play for my university team on a couple of occasions and had liked me and invited me into train. It was just a training opportunity, really, just to train with the first team. And that was as a centre half. So that was when that transition was starting to happen. Yeah, Halifax, I trained with them a couple of times, saw the level firsthand, played a few reserve games, did okay in those reserve games. But they were pushing for the playoffs in their first team, their senior team at the time. So I was getting nowhere near that team. But Chris Wilder, I got a taste of what it was like to work for a manager of his quality, or to train under a manager of his quality. Yeah, so fond memories of that, but they didn't materialise into anything further.
You played in a university team, Sheffield Hallam University. I probably said Hallam a bit wrong. But anyway, I'm sure you get where I'm coming from. You combined football with education. Now, I hear about this a lot, especially in America. But now you're as a manager. Was that the right move for you to do?
Yeah, and we have to talk honestly what university was. I don't know if it's got stricter now, but there was only a handful of lectures in the week, so you had a lot of free time. So my Tuesday, Thursday evenings were spent either training or playing non-league alongside the Saturday afternoon, obviously. And Wednesday is always the sport day at college or university. So I was always able to play for the university on a Wednesday, and we train on a Monday night for the university as well. So it fitted in perfectly. And most of my, housemates, my classmates all worked in the bars to sort of finance their way through university. I was able to do that through football. So I was really lucky in relation to that. I was almost training them or playing every single day while still enjoying the social life of Sheffield, like all students do. So we had 3 fantastic years at Sheffield. It never felt like sport was outweighing education, or education was outweighing sport in any way whatsoever. Probably because I didn't do much work until the third year when you've got to do your dissertation. But then when that came around alongside the exams, I got my head down, and I was fortunate enough to come out with a 2-1.
When I was doing the research about you, I was very, very shocked to see the 2006 British University Games. I've never, ever heard of this before, but once I did my research, it was definitely something quite big for you to achieve.
Yeah, because through playing for Sheffield Hallam, I got spotted. I got invited down for trials, which were at Bath University at the time, and I got in a team. And to represent your country, I know it's only university level, but it was a cap. I got a cap and got recognition for the university for myself. That was my opportunity to impress the team Bath manager, which was Paul Tisdale and Jed Roddy at the time. And when we all know what happened from that point on, but to actually play in the tournament, I think it was actually in Swansea. I played in one tournament in Bath and then one in Swansea. And they were doing 3 or 4 day affairs where you play Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. As you can imagine, like I've alluded to, there was a social side to it as well. Because it wasn't just the football games that were going on. There was, every sport you can imagine played at university. And it was the pinnacle of university football. So, yeah, fond memories.
Team Bath came up for you next. That was a great place for you, Player of the Year. What was that like for you to be in Bath? I believe a place you were quite familiar with.
Yeah, just fantastic to go down to a full-time football programme. They played in the Southern Premier League, so the non-league football scene still going on, but we trained every single day. And it was serious football, and they had some good players, some really good players who'd just come out of the professional game. So I was coming at it a little bit older, having not played professional football. Some of these players had played league games. A lot of them being associated with football clubs, professional football clubs. So great to train with them every day. There's a social aspect to it, camaraderie, the friendships we built, those experiences, and also I had great coaching there. Not only Paul Tisdale, Jed Roddy, but Andy Tilson, who was a fantastic centre half, had a great career, Bristol Rovers, QPR. He taught me what I needed to know about centre half, probably in a short time, which we only had, in that one season, and also the fact that I hadn't ever been coached as a centre half previously. I was able to take on a lot on board in that season, and that has certainly helped me for what was to come at Exeter.
Well, Exeter did come up next. You are correct in that. And you became a leader there. You, again, won some really important trophies. So for you to sign for Exeter, what was that like for you at the time? Was it an agent? Was it an email? What was it like?
No, there was no agents back then. There was a
Yes.
simplicity to it. Myself and Neil Saunders were both playing at Team Bath, and Paul Tisdale, who'd gone on to manage Exeter City, wanted to sign us. They'd just been beaten at Wembley by Morecambe in the playoff final of the National League, and signed myself and Neil, and people didn't bat an eyelid. Two students going to sign for Exeter City didn't mean anything at all. But fortunately, we were probably two quite good players. Neil, he was a really talented lad, but for a terrible knee injury. And we went down there and gave it our all. And our first season ended in a fairy tale ending, winning at Wembley, getting man of the match in a 1-0 victory against Cambridge in the playoff final was absolutely incredible. And all of a sudden, I'm a Football League player. Having been, 18 months ago, been a non-league goalkeeper. And we went straight through League Two. So my first 2 seasons as a professional player, promotion through the playoffs at Wembley, in my first season, then I'm finishing second in League Two, and then all of a sudden I'm playing in League One against Norwich, Southampton, Leeds, the Sheffield clubs, just monstrous clubs and good players. But I'd grown into probably a leadership role, like you just alluded to there. I was captain of the club by then, and the following 2 seasons, the first season in League One, we stayed up last game of the season, beat Huddersfield at home 2-1, and then in my final season, we got our highest ever finish in League One. So 4 incredible years at Exeter City, and certainly not what I'd imagined when I first signed.
Well, when you won at Wembley, what was that like to play on the Wembley pitch, to win? It's historic. I mean, I'm sure when you watch games that are played at Wembley now, you think, I've played on that pitch.
Yeah, quietly remind my wife that I've played at Wembley. She forgets that. There's a big picture in the garage. But in terms of your career, and I suppose because it was so early on in my career, I didn't quite take it in for what it was. Because I've been back to Wembley as a coach and as a manager and been beaten there. But to win was just incredible. And, it's strange playing at Wembley. It was Exeter versus Cambridge. I think there was 43,000 there. So it was half full. And, it's a big old stadium. So almost the bottom tiers had people in it. But then there's these tiers above that with absolutely no one there. But a good atmosphere. It was a hot day. It was a poor game of football. We scored it early on in the first half and then defended well in the second half. And, I was fortunate to clear one off the line and got man of the match probably off the back of that. But yeah, it was just the euphoria of promotion. And probably it meant more to the people around me who'd been there the previous year, the ones who had the pain of actually getting beat there the previous season. It meant an awful lot to them. And similar to what happened after winning the FA Trophy at Burscough, at Exeter, we went off to Magaluf for a few days and drank all the bars dry, but had a fantastic time.
And again, I'm sure the club paid for the Magaluf trip, right?
I think they contributed a little bit. Exeter City have never been one to contribute much to end the season trips, so we might have got a little bit out of them, but it wouldn't have been much.
And then to go ahead and win, to lift the trophy at Wembley, what was that feeling like?
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. In front of your family, in front of your friends. Like you say, you probably wish, now I've retired and in the position I am now, wish you could live those days again and soak it in a little bit more and take your time in the celebrations and take moments and just take deep breaths and look more at what it means to people as opposed to be in the middle of the celebrations. It went too quickly, but certainly a fond memory. And in my first season as a professional footballer, having won at Wembley, that might have been enough, but luckily I was going to carry on.
And then when you went up to League One, like you mentioned, you did stay up on the final game of the season. Again, in a league that's so competitive and so intense, those must have been some amazing celebrations there as well.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, I think I played every minute of every game bar 20 minutes in that season. And I had 2 operations at the end of that season. And my body was shot. I remember the relief. It's strange when success is seen as staying up. But for Exeter in League One, that first season was absolutely huge. Yeah, we certainly celebrated. But for myself, that was a painful off-season because I had a couple of surgeries, one on my foot and one on my knee. And then I had to get ready for the next pre-season as well. Yeah, incredible. I actually scored in that game. I made a mistake in the first minute and Huddersfield scored and went 1-0 up, and then I scored to equalise. And then Ryan Harley scored a fantastic winner. I think it was in the 80th minute, something like that. But fantastic celebrations. And Exeter is a small place, not much else around it, so to speak, down in Devon. So yeah, we also had on the back of the promotions the almost legendary status at an early stage in Exeter.
Two questions here. So, when you are a player and a manager, what is pre-season like for you? Because I know as a player, it's going to ahead and letting your body rest and going on holiday. For a manager, are you just looking at signings? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's totally different. As a player, I used to kind of split the 6 weeks you'd have off. The first 3 weeks, I wouldn't touch a football or my trainers or anything physical. I'd just totally relax and enjoy myself, see my friends, socialise, go on holiday, drink and eat whatever I wanted to. And then probably have a 3 week build up to pre-season where I'd push myself. And then I get the balance right in relation to that. As a manager, unfortunately, it's totally different. The most difficult thing in a manager's off season is the first few days at the end of the season, because you're releasing players. You're letting players know if their future is going to be here or not. So you have those meetings with the players, the staff. You get all the reports of the previous season, and then look towards the following season in terms of budgets and stats and data. And then you work out what you need, which is always an ongoing process, but obviously it's heightened during when the windows are open. So certainly, May and June are Zoom calls, meetings, meeting players, meeting agents, constant discussions. If you've got a head of recruitment alongside you, which fortunately I did in Marcus Flitcroft, you work alongside someone in terms of balancing out the workload. But yeah, my wife will tell you better than I can, but the amount of times I've been on holiday and had to take a phone call or have a Zoom call booked or go and meet someone is incredible. But then if you get the right players, your job as a manager is an awful lot easier.
So when you do sign a player, again, I want to speak about your playing career, but I'm so interested about this managerial element as well. So when you sign a player, they're coming on a plane or a car. You must be so excited to meet them after all the months and the weeks of finalising all the paperwork.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on forever. It does. There's the back and forths, and then you think you're close, and then you're miles away. And the one thing is not to get too emotional about it, to understand what the situation is. At most of the clubs I've worked for, in terms of where we are budget-wise and pecking order-wise, there's a lot of teams ahead of us. So you have to understand that if a player signs for Exeter City, or even when I was at Rotherham in the Championship, they've probably waited for everyone else first, and we're a little bit lower down the pecking order. But then actually, once you shake hands with them, then you see the ink on the contract, and you know all that hard work has come to fruition, then you just hope they are what you want them to be and what you've seen them to be in the clips and the footage and the experience you've had in terms of watching them live. And then, fingers crossed. There's always a risk involved in any part of recruitment, but fingers crossed they're the player you actually need them to be.
And how do you introduce them to your side?
Well, it depends when they sign, because if they're there on the first day of pre-season, then there's a lot of new faces who almost join together, and you have an introductory meeting, and everyone meets each other on the first day. Everyone returning from the previous season, so if you're there for the first day of pre-season, it's a lot easier. If you sign as throughout the course of the season or pre-season, whatever day it is, then you introduce them to the group, and you always introduce them to the club captain, introduce them to the senior ones in the change room, and say, take them under your wing. The kit man's the most important person, because you've got to sort out the kit, and then you know where you sit in the change room. But players are resilient; they fit in pretty quickly. So once those initial introductions that they're out of the way, then it's a real race against time to then get them understanding the principles of play and your playing philosophy.
Unfortunately, Matthew, I think the only thing I'm going to be getting close to as a manager is football manager of the game, so I can only really go off that. So when you are a manager of a club on Football Manager, you can sign a backroom staff, you can sign some scouts. I know it probably varies from club to club, but for you, have you been able to assemble a backroom staff before?
Not so much assemble one. I inherited staff at Exeter. Obviously, Paul Tisdale had been at Exeter for 12 years. Matt Oakley left with Paul. Mel Gwinnett left with Paul. So, he's the assistant manager of the club and the goalkeeper coach of the club, left with Paul. So I had to fill those roles pretty quickly. You put them out to advert, word of mouth, people in the game. And I also always like to promote from within. So I like to, especially at a club like Exeter, give the academy coaches and people within the academy the opportunity to step up. And that's what we did at Exeter. And, I had some fantastic people to work with in those 4 years. And then obviously some of those came with me to Rotherham and then Bristol Rovers. But when you're a lower league manager, it's not like you're a Premier League manager. We've got financial backing, and you can say to various members of staff, you wait for my next job. A lot of these people are now back in work elsewhere and will stay in those positions. So I'm looking forward to working with new staff in the future, but I've been lucky to work with some fantastic people.
Now, I asked a coach who managed in Finland this question. He's a Scottish guy called Stevie. And I said to him, what's the worst part of your job? Is it paperwork? What is it? What is the worst part of Matthew Taylor's managerial job?
That's a good question. Leaving players out is difficult. The biggest challenge, I think, for most managers is when you leave players out, still having strength in the relationship, because you'll gather from this call, this meeting, I'm quite honest and straightforward. I say it how it is. But if you're telling a player why they're not playing and you're quite straight and honest about it, sometimes it can be seen as a critique. So I always feel the biggest challenge is getting a balance, because you've probably got a squad of 25 to 30 players. You're only picking 11 at the weekend, and a lot of those 11 are consistent and don't change. So there's a lot of disappointment and sometimes resentment elsewhere, and you have to invest in those players as much as you do with your starting group, because it is a squad game. So we're getting the balance right in relation to that, and sometimes players don't deserve to be left out of the team. Sometimes it's circumstance. So those conversations are difficult, and certainly when contracts are involved and you're releasing players, those are the difficult sides of management. Paperwork and other bits and pieces, they're by the by. The main crux of it is getting a team that functions on the football pitch out there, and one which reflects you as a person and a manager. And generally, we've felt we've done that.
So back to your playing career, when you were appointed captain at Cheltenham Town, what was that like? You must have gained some sort of confidence in yourself, but also now you've got to have a role model responsibility throughout the whole club.
Yeah, I mean, I kept at captain Exeter. I was vice captain at Charlton. I'd gone up to Bradford, but hadn't really featured. My body was starting to let me down at that point, and dropping down from Bradford, who were in League One, to sign at Cheltenham in League Two, and being named club captain. You're always immensely proud. But that was the season I learned the most about what football really is, because I think we had 4 different managers that season, and we actually got relegated out of the Football League. And my body let me down towards the back end of the season when I needed it the most. So you learn a lot about what it's like to be a leader when the club and the staff haven't quite got the support they need or the expertise in place. And it was a real shame, because we started the season so well. We had high expectations. I think we were top after 6 or 7 games. But then we went on a terrible run of form. Obviously, the manager lost his job, and then there was 3 other managers came in after that, all different styles and situations and moments and views and opinions, and it just turned into one big mess. But also there was a time in that season where a lot of the senior players got shifted out to one side, and that's exactly what we needed, ironically, towards the end of the season when we were young and naive and trying to stay in the Football League. So a big learning curve right at the end of my career. I spoke about the success in my terms of my first full season at Exeter City, but that season at Cheltenham taught me a lot.
A club that often likes to have a carousel of managers is Watford. So for you as a player to go through all these managers in one season, how much does it change? Like the atmosphere of the club, just everything. Does it change as much as we think?
Yeah, it does. It does, especially during the season. I've took over from manager during the season. I took over from Paul Tisdale, who'd been there for 12 years, like I alluded to. At the end of the season, going into a pre-season, and you always get a build towards the season. When it's not knee-jerk reactions, but when a manager loses a job in October, November, then something totally different comes in. It's new, and it's new energy, and it's a new feel, and it's new ideas. But you need time in relation to that. If that doesn't work, and then that, obviously at Cheltenham, we had 4 managers that season. It just turned into a mess, and not only that, but the amount of the turnover of players. I said about when all the senior ones started to leave or were pushed out the door. I remember some of them going off to train with the under-18s. It was absolutely surreal, and I'm stood there as club captain, almost thinking we need these players on the pitch of a Saturday, and this new manager is sending them away to train with the under-18s for no reason, or in my eyes, no reason whatsoever. Yeah, very strange. And then new players come in, and it's you lose a familiarity. And most managers of a successful team know there's a consistency there. There's a rhythm to it. There's players, there's partnerships, people who know each other. You can almost play off each other as much as that, and you're almost playing with unknowns. And that made that second half of the season very difficult.
As a player, you obviously joined Newport County, which, as we all know, are in Wales. When you are moving to a new club, especially in a different country like Wales, what's the package like from the football club? I know you've got to move house, maybe new car. The whole atmosphere for you must change.
Well, I didn't when I signed for Newport, because I lived in Cheltenham, and Cheltenham to Newport was just over an hour, so it wasn't too bad. It was a journey I could do. Newport weren't a big club, so it wasn't a big package at some clubs where you can imagine they could give you a house, accommodation, sort everything out for you. No, it wasn't quite like that. I signed for Terry Butcher, a fantastic man, a fantastic manager. I never played a game for him. The injuries I'd had at the back end of that Cheltenham season were still in me, going into that season at Newport. I don't know how I passed a medical, but I did, but I got injured in pre-season, and unfortunately, by the time I was fit again, Terry Butcher had lost his job. A real shame, because a man who I admired from afar, watching him play football. You know, iconic images of him leading this warrior character, playing centre half for England, and then to meet him and to see him coach and to see what sort of person he was absolutely incredible. So I was so sorry I didn't get to play a game from him. And then similar to the Cheltenham scenario, a bit messy at Newport in terms of the management.
As a player, you must have the resilience to keep going. But I suppose when at the back end of your career, you are looking at retirement and you have got these injuries, you eventually retired after Bath City. But was there ever a time in your career towards the latter stages where you thought to yourself that maybe this isn't the right thing for you to do anymore?
Yeah, exactly that. When I signed at Cheltenham, that's when I enrolled on a course at Hartbury College. Did a masters alongside getting some coaching experience because the foot injury I'd had in my last couple of seasons at Exeter carried on through Charlton and then Bradford reared its head again. I had surgery on it then, and the surgeon said, because obviously he was putting pins in my foot, he sort of said, you've probably got a couple of years, if that, left in you. So when someone says that to you, you get a little bit of a feel for what's to come. And it also affected my game. I couldn't turn, I couldn't jump. I had no push off in me. I was never a quick player. Everyone who knows me or saw me playing knows that. But I couldn't move in my own circle. After that second foot operation, I was very limited and certainly lost my jump height and my aerial prowess or my ability in the air was a big part of my game. So I already had half an eye on the future, and I knew getting the masters alongside the degree and coaching experience that would put me in good stead for the future. But then you still need opportunities to go alongside that. Unfortunately, when I finished that at Newport, going to Bath City, I'm working at Hartbury College, and then the coaching job came back up at Exeter. I was well thought of in terms of a coaching brain to get the opportunity.
And the opportunity was obviously through your former playing career. Do you think that if you didn't play for Exeter in the past and you didn't have the football career that you had, but you were still at that UEFA Pro managerial level, would you have got the job or not?
No, no,
Okay.
no. The fact that I had, 4 years playing for Exeter City, captaining the club in the last couple of years, and the success we had, and then going back there as coach, and we had success on the pitch in terms of first team, but the 21s group who I was, I suppose, managing at the time at Exeter had good runs in the Premier League Cup. So you build a bit of a reputation, a bit of a profile. But for a young coach to get the opportunity of actually managing the first team, I only probably got that because of the affiliation from previous and the affiliation with the fans, and a lot of people at the club knew me. So that package of probably 6 years worth of them knowing me and me knowing the club put me in a good position. That when Paul decided to move on to MK Dons, when the interview process happened, I must have said the right things, and I got the opportunity.
Well, you were appointed in early June, so you must have seen tunnel vision all the way through to the first few months of the season. As fans, we get really excited to get to the first few games, but as a manager, everything's on you to win the first few games and to really push on. So what was going through your mind at the time?
Exactly that. Start the season well. There was a turnover of players. We made some new signings. There was a new feel about it. Paul Tisdale had been there for 12 years, 12 seasons. Absolutely incredible. Built Exeter to what it is today. And I wanted to continue that. I wanted to still give young players the opportunity. I wanted a slightly different approach, but I wanted to get the fans back on side, so to speak, as well. And we started the season well. That's the biggest relief as a manager. If you win your first game of the season, certainly the first home game, and you win it well, it's almost money in the bank for when you need it further down the line. And we competed in that first season. We would have been in the playoffs without a shadow of doubt, if not the automatics. But we lost our leading goal scorer on the 1st of January. He had a clause in his contract. We lost Jaden Stockley to Preston North End. I think he got 16 goals at the time. He would have finished on 30 plus goals that season. Unfortunately, we lost him in January. We're never able to replace that goal scoring prowess, but still a credible season in the first one.
So when you are a manager, how many weeks ahead do you look into the future? Is it 2? Is it 1? Is it a month?
Well, you never take your eye off the next game, but there's constant planning. There is constant planning. There's planning in terms of training. There's planning in terms of games. There's planning in terms of players and contracts and those situations and the timeline involved. But you have to win your next game. And if you don't win your next game, or you do win your next game, try and win the next one after that. There's a simplicity to that which sometimes you can get drawn away from because there's so many distractions, so many opinions elsewhere, so many things trying to take you away from the pitch and actually winning games of football. So certainly something I've experienced in my last couple of roles. So yeah, just concentrating on winning the next game. You never think too far ahead, but as you're going through that process of building towards a Saturday and training, then you're getting a better bank of experience and knowledge of what's in front of you, not only in terms of opposition, but what's in your own building as well. The academy players coming through, the senior players who are contracted, who you want to move the team forward with, who's probably needs to be moved on at a certain time, who's coming through from that youthful aspect, who's going to be good in 18 months' time or 8 weeks' time, who needs a pathway clear for them, who's going to be, that young player who comes through but needs to take that slot. So we need to move people around. So your brain's constantly ticking, but the biggest thing is always to win the next game.
And in terms of fans, how important are they for you? And what do you do to have that good relationship with them?
Well, at Exeter, I was lucky, and at Exeter, I spoke openly about this because as a player, I'd spend time on the pitch applauding the fans. I wanted the players to have the best connection with the fans. I knew I already had a relationship with them and a connection through my playing days and a respect aspect for each other. So I really tried to get the players to take the limelight as much as I could in my managerial time at Exeter. But you need personalities and characters to do that. And you look at the ones who the fans, literally adore. They want to be like. When I played, it was the Adam Stansfield of the world. Players like that who just give everything no matter what. And then my time as a manager, what the fans thought of the likes of Nicky Law, Sam Nombe, Giovanni Brown when he was playing well for us. You get to see what you want your team to look like and their sort of personality, and put the actual skill side aside. The team's personality is as big as anything else, and certainly, there are times when you're standing there as a manager and you're thinking that's not a fair reflection on my personality, and then sometimes you're standing there proud as punch that they look like you want them to look like, and you feel a little bit of you in that team, and that's probably when you have the success.
As fans, again, I'm going to go back to this Football Manager scenario. You get told you get 50 million in the transfer window to spend, and you can, spend it on whoever you like, and you've got a wage budget of this much. As the manager, what's that like? Do you have to sit down with the chairman and say, right, you've got this much, or do you not even know?
Well, I don't know. I've never been given money like that, unfortunately. At Exeter, we knew our budget, we knew our limitations, we knew the ethos of the club, which was to promote young players and to give academy players the opportunity. We knew we had to sell players, first and foremost, to keep the club running and keep the club afloat, which we did that fantastically well in my time at Exeter. And then managing Rotherham in the Championship, having the lowest budget, means you're below everyone else. Maybe one day I'll get to that point where the chairman says you've got 50 million to spend it how you will, or spend it how you like. And that'll be a new experience. But you work with what you've got, and you have to treat the club's finances with respect and understand it, and then make the most out of it. And to work with limited budgets, which I have done at Exeter and Rotherham and Bristol Rovers to a certain extent, and then outperform those budgets is an incredible achievement and a challenge in itself, but certainly something I'm very proud of.
You won Manager of the Month numerous times, and obviously you got a club record 19 unbeaten run, and obviously you got promoted, so it's an unbelievable season for you. Have you got the trophies of the Manager of the Month displayed in the house somewhere?
No, I've not. They might be in the loft
In the
down in
loft?
Exeter. Yeah,
No.
yeah. I mean, look, when you've got a young family and you move around as much as I've moved around, unfortunately things get misplaced. So yeah, those managers and mums trophies, they're big, heavy things. They better use the doorstops than anything else. So yeah, certainly in terms of where things are, memorabilia are, they're dotted around in terms of property we've got down in Exeter, down in the loft down there. At some stage, we'll have to go and clear that and bring them up here. And it'd be nice to get them out and put them on show. But I've never been one for memorabilia and things like that. The biggest things I take in terms of my managerial time at Exeter wasn't just the promotion and the playoff final at Wembley. It was going through COVID with the club and with the people, and for the trust-owned club, with financially under the restraints we all know and understand, to come through that in a position of strength was incredible, and to guide people through it and to make people feel they're supported and safe was massive, because we weren't expecting COVID when it happened. We didn't know how to react, but I think the sign of true leadership and management is to stand up in those moments. And putting the football aside, immensely proud of what myself and all the staff were able to achieve in difficult circumstances during that time.
And during that time, I'm presuming you had Zoom calls with the coaches, with the players, but in that time, did you also maybe tell the players to just, take it easy and rest with family?
Well, yeah, I mean, we didn't know. I mean, we were in lockdown, so even seeing people you couldn't do. We had countless Zoom calls. The season was suspended. We didn't know when we'd be back training. What would that look like? Everyone had these not off season, but these physical programs. But there was no end to it. Like a pre-season, like I said, when I was playing, you could have 2 weeks building towards your return to training. We didn't know when we were coming back. We didn't know if we were coming back. Players, had limited facilities, limited equipment. Such a surreal time. And even when we did come back together, training in pods of 2 or 3 people and mass and social distancing, it was impossible. How he managed to put a football team out in those situations and go through that playoff campaign in that scenario was absolutely incredible. But we did it and we got on with it. And then pretty much the whole of the following season was played behind closed doors. This is only 4 years ago. People forget it. It feels like a lifetime ago, but people forget it and not being able to go out and watch football. But the biggest learning curve is just people, how you treat people, how honest you are, and the respect factor, and how people need to feel like you are supporting them and invested in them. And we certainly did that during that period. And once we got clarity of when the season was going to start again, or the campaign was going to start again, then we had something to concentrate on. But yeah, real surreal time.
Now, you've obviously worked in many divisions, many leagues. What's been the best one for you? What do you class as the best league in the world?
Look, to experience the championship and to achieve what we did at Rotherham in terms of staying up and getting to 50 points in my first season was incredible because, you know, Rotherham, we know where they are budget-wise in terms of championship level, but size of the club, minuscule compared to everyone else. And not just the stadiums you're playing at, but the opposition you're playing against, the managers and the coaches you're up against, the atmospheres, how relentless that challenge is, physically, mentally, and your skill set. Championship was brilliant. Look, I'd love to get to the Premier League one day. Will it happen? Who knows? But to be able to experience the championship was fantastic, and the fact that we stayed up and we were celebrating the success of staying in the championship for Rotherham United was a massive thing. We'd broken a cycle of numerous seasons where they'd always got promoted from League One and then relegated at the first port of call. Was absolutely fantastic, and I loved every minute of it. It was a challenge because you didn't win many games of football. Your team never looked like it was performing particularly well because you didn't have the ball. You were defending more often than not. You had to play a certain style of football, but we were able to get a formula which actually got us enough points.
Well, obviously, we need an Englishman to win the Premier League, because that's never been done. So hopefully you can get there sometime soon. In terms of going to Rotherham, obviously the club, Exeter, allowed you to speak to the club. Why did you decide that Rotherham was the right move for you?
Chris, I was at the point where I'd managed Exeter for 4.25 seasons, and we'd obviously had the success of the playoff final, sold countless players, got through COVID in a strong position, then got promoted, done incredible things at Exeter. And in that summer of the promotion, there were a few jobs at championship level and good League One jobs came available. I had a couple of conversations, but nothing materialised. And naturally, when you're ambitious and you want to work at the highest level possible, you start to think, what will the next opportunity look like? And we started the season really well in League One. We were in the top 10. Myself or my agent got a phone call to say, would I speak to Rotherham, championship club? So you have to take into account whether that's going to be your opportunity and if that's the opportunity you want to take. And I felt it was the right time to leave Exeter. I don't think I could have taken many further than the top 10 of League One. It was going to be the opportunity to work at championship level. Rotherham had started the season pretty well, so I knew it was going to be a challenge to keep them up. I was told that before taking the job, but I saw it as a fantastic opportunity and a challenge I wanted to take.
You beat Middlesbrough to confirm the side staying up in the Championship in May. To go into a side against Middlesbrough, who are obviously unbelievable, to go ahead and beat them, the celebrations after that. I want to hear about the celebrations in this sense now, because obviously this is a bit more recent times.
Yeah, I mean, not muted celebrations, but if you get promotion or if you win a trophy, the celebrations are organised, they're structured, they're not taken for granted, but they're all done for you. I think people were a little bit surprised we stayed up. There was nothing organised by the club. The players hadn't had anything organised. We'd waited. So myself, a couple of senior players, my wife tried to organise a day at the stadium. Separate from the club. The club had no real impact in this input into it. And we hired out bouncy castles. We got a catering van. We got a video screen for families and young children. And we got a magician. We tried to get a free bar, games on the pitch, and we invited all the players, their families, all the staff, their families, all the staff at the stadium, which was vitally important. And we tried to get a bit of buy-in from everyone, and it turned into a great day. And we had the end of season awards and the season dinner as well. But there was nothing over organised than that. And looking back, it would have been nice for a gesture of some sort from the club, maybe to say, you've made a fantastic achievement, staying in the championship, and we'll put this on for you. But that's the way, I suppose, survival is seen. You don't want to over celebrate because you don't want to be in that position all the time. But for that achievement, in terms of our achievement at Rotherham was a bigger achievement than getting Exeter City promoted. Whereas Exeter City get promoted, you get the open top bus parade, you get the holidays, you get the meeting the mayor, you get the freedom of city, you get absolutely everything. You get every manager of the year, the LMA manager of the year when Exeter City got promoted. Whereas keeping Rotherham in the championship is, Rotherham have stayed up, well done. kind of move on. Whereas actually, as a group of players and the staff, we all probably deserved a little bit more than that.
What was your routine like at Rotherham as the manager on a match day?
Pretty straightforward. Spend time with my family if it was a home game. Spend time with my family. I had a young boy at the time. I've obviously had a couple more since then. And the wife in the morning. Get across to the stadium nice and early. A few final tweaks. Most work is done in the days leading up to it and the week leading up to it. A manager's job really on match day is to speak to the players, calm them down, motivate them, do whatever you need to do to get them right mentally and physically for the game, and then leave them to it, and then be really sharp in terms of your in-game changes and half-time, and then sort of obviously substitutions. So and most of your work is done. There's times where your team talks take care of themselves, and there's times when things happen in the lead up to a game where you can use that as ammunition, or you use that to communicate a certain focus point you want to the team. But we wanted our principles to stay the same. We wanted to look the same as a team. We never actually got a handle on the home and away contrast at Rotherham. Our home form was generally pretty strong. Our away form was abysmal, and we could never quite get a handle on that. But our home form was what kept us up and got us most points. So quite relaxed on a match day morning. If I could get to the gym on a away game at a hotel, certainly do that. Maybe a bit of fresh air and a walk, eat and drink the right things, but just make sure everyone in terms of the support staff, which are more important than the manager on a match day, the physios, the S&C staff, your coaches, they're the ones who actually interact with the players more in the actual build-up to kick-off.
You mentioned that the players obviously would look up to you for motivation, advice. Who do you look up to as the manager? Because obviously when you are in a relegation scrap, things aren't exactly easy. So who did you turn to?
Your family, people you know and trust in the game. A lot of people in senior positions at clubs don't quite understand the game, unfortunately. They just see a league position and want the results to change. So you have to take strength from within, really. Have incredible self-belief, be incredibly stubborn. Understand what you think this group of players are capable of. I always felt we'd stay keeper Rotherham in the league that season. I did do in the past second season as well. I had full trust in that group of players. So even when it was difficult times and results weren't going our way, I still felt we had enough in the change room and enough character as much as skill. So you take strength from within. I had some good people and good players around me.
Well, some of the players that you had in the second season, just before you unfortunately got the sack from Rotherham, was Johansson, Adoffin, some really amazing players who are now going on to some incredible things. So when you see players that you've worked under go on to some really great things, like, for example, Johansson's played for his country, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, Victor was our standout player before I got there. After I left, for a couple of seasons, he was the best player Rotherham had. He had to be because he's goalkeeper and probably overworked. But alongside his form came his international career as well. Fantastic character, fantastic person, great goalkeeper. And he's probably one of the few players who I worked with in my time at Rotherham who are still playing at that level. And now he's playing international football. So immensely proud to play a small part in that. He had some fantastic goalkeeper coaches. He worked alongside Scott Brown and Billy Mercer for a small period. Would have learned an awful lot from that. And I think he's been captain at Stoke this season and maybe last season as well. So gone on to a leadership role and see him first choice at Sweden and hopefully have the opportunity to play in international tournaments is just incredible. But there's not many out of that group who still play at championship level. Ollie Rathbone, obviously at Wrexham, and Chidozie Benny, now on loan at Sheffield United. The rest are playing League One, League Two, or not playing at all. Probably gives you an idea of where the squad was at.
And obviously Watford was your last game, and as I spoke to you before, I wanted to ask about this. So you did lose 5-0 in that game, and obviously it did seal your time at the club there. But Vicarage Road, what's that like to be a manager of? Sometimes it's quite quiet, but sometimes it can be quite loud.
Yeah, obviously we struggled that day, and that scoreline hurt us. It should have been a 2-3-0 game, but we finished the game poorly with injuries and conceded a couple in the last minute, and that probably sealed my fate. Actually, 2 weeks prior to that, we performed poorly in a derby game against Sheffield Wednesday, and then you're a little bit under pressure. So when those goals were going in and it got to 4-5 against Watford, naturally you're a little bit fearful of what's to come. So I didn't enjoy that occasion, but I loved when I played there as a player. And the season before, we drew 1-1 there. Good result and really good game of football that time round. So always a good place to play. Like you say, it can be a fantastic atmosphere, but I know sometimes it can be a difficult atmosphere as well. A lot of football clubs and a lot of football stadiums are like that. But yeah, some fond memories, but obviously that one will stick out as my last game at Rotherham. Still didn't want to lose my job, but unfortunately got the phone call the following day.
And it's a phone call, right? So where were you at that time?
Well, it was going into international break, so we were preparing to go for a few days up in Scotland, and unfortunately, sometimes the way football works, the rumour was whirling, so to speak. My wife had a few messages from people because I'm not on social media, but I suppose on social media on the Saturday night saying, "Has Matt been sacked?" And she said, "No, he's not heard anything." And then I got a phone call the next morning, just to go and meet the chairman at his house, and it was a very short meeting. The obvious words were said when we decided still to go up to Scotland. We had it pre-planned, and we had almost a few days up in Scotland, and to get away from it, yeah, it was my first experience of being sacked. So, there's moments when you're emotional, there's moments when you're worried about what's to come. Disappointed because even in my second season at Rotherham, I could see where we were trying to get to. We had a lot of things go against us. But I was Rotherham at championship level. We were only going to get better. And then you just got this feeling of what's next. And you also still want Rotherham to do well. It was such a shame to almost see them go through a 6-week period where they were searching for a manager. I think it probably gives you a bit of an idea of how difficult that job is, that not many people were jumping at it at that moment in time. And once they did appoint someone, they didn't have that new manager bounce as well, and they finished the season really poorly. So a real shame for my year at Rotherham to finish like that, because I was trying to build something bigger than just, what was in front of us on the Saturday. But, ultimately I didn't win enough games in that second season.
Before we speak about Bristol Rovers, I wanted to ask you about, now you are out of work, so it is jumping ahead just slightly. I know you're watching the games. I know you might be at some games. Have you been to any games through managers, or do you have to pay your own?
Sometimes you have to pay. I'm lucky I've got some contacts in the game, and I know some heads of recruitment and directors of football at places where they can get me in to watch games and request tickets. But yeah, sometimes you have to pay. I've actually made an effort to go and watch games in an unofficial capacity, and go and stand in the away ends and get a feel for people, to get a better connection of what the supporters ultimately want, and what they see during the games and what they feel during the games. You can all go and watch nice games of football and sit in the posh seats in the middle and have a fantastic view, but sometimes that's not real. So getting down and dirty a little bit. Fortunate enough, went to the Hearts Hibs derby up in Scotland. Was in the away end with the Hibs fans. Hearts scored a last minute winner, and to see the stadium erupt like it did, wow, incredible, absolutely incredible. But just ignites that fire and that burning desire inside to get back there and doing what you can. So taking as many games as possible of different levels. Realistically, if I get a job in England, it'd be League One or League Two. So get a real handle for where the leagues are at in terms of in this country, and then maybe Scotland as well.
Did you celebrate the goals when they went in?
It depends. Out of fear of being beaten up if I didn't celebrate, sometimes you have to pretend to celebrate. But you just, you fit in, and you still, certainly in the away end, stand at the back and, try and find a quiet place because you don't know the songs. But, it's pretty straightforward football, certainly lower league football in the English pyramid. Fans want to see players who give absolutely everything and a little bit more, and then the skill sets on top of that. No one can always be pleased, so it's generally always the manager's fault if a team isn't playing well. Just to get amongst it, because I'm a football fan myself. I'm a Manchester United fan. I grew up watching Manchester United, but to watch the level I've worked at also gives you a sense of achievement, and to watch the level I've played at. It's a real shame that my young family and my children will never get to watch me play football, and my wife actually never got me to watch me play football. They came after my playing career, and I'd have been so proud if they'd have been able to see me play the game, which I love, and hopefully they'll grow to love as well, because it's a fantastic achievement. And I've been so privileged and so lucky to play the game and then coach it and then manage it. Hopefully they get a sense of that.
Obviously, football is a game of contact. So when you want to sign a player, it's who you know, and if it's the right time to do so. Have you been watching any specific players, maybe at Watford? Because I want to go back to Watford here, because I know Watford are a club with so much talent, potential. Imran Louza, Chapmadadze, Marma, you can name every single player in that side has definitely got a future in the game. But obviously, as you mentioned there, you might be in League One, you might be in League Two, you could be in Scotland. Is there any players that are sticking out to you? And if so, who?
No, I'm not been able to watch Watford this season, unfortunately.
Shame
After
you should
this
come to
phone
the
call,
Vic.
yeah, after this phone call, I certainly might do. I've watched some Championship football. Obviously, living back in Sheffield now, Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United, getting a feel for the local teams and whatever opposition they're playing against. But Watford, maybe due to the ownership and a lot of change in managers, you always sort of look at it from afar, and you don't know if it's got the consistency there in terms of the playing personnel. But then you better equip them. You've watched them live to tell me who the good players are. But you generally get a feel for how teams are set up, and where the strengths and weaknesses are. And there's always some standout players, and certainly at championship level, teams like Watford will have some serious players.
Bristol Rovers was your most recent club that you were at. You started the season off really well, beating the likes of Bolton and Portsmouth, but for you, it was ultimately a disappointing way to end.
Yeah, yeah. A difficult club to manage. I always say it was the right club just at the wrong time. Yeah, took over in relatively difficult circumstances. The club wanted a slight change of culture, and then the remit in the off season was to sign players, young players from the league below, and give them the opportunity and try and turn them into assets. But League One was a brutal league that season. We actually still were doing okay. It quickly became apparent that the squad wasn't had the strength which we needed to compete towards the top end of League One, but we were a mid-table team. We just had a little bit of poor form before I lost my job. Certain situations and scenarios involved in relation to that, but then similar to Rotherham, really, to see what happened since I left kind of suggests we were doing not a great job, but we were doing okay, and getting the most or the best out of that group of players. Yeah, I'd have liked things to be different, but and also a great learning curve in terms of when you're not fully in control of certain aspects of the club. It's still you who loses your job. It's still you who getting judged. It's still you who people got opinions on. Yeah, a great learning curve for me.
Obviously, the unfortunate circumstances that you had to deal with, and I'm sorry to hear about those. You said that you were navigating through autopilot at the time, and perhaps that you weren't quite fit for the role at that present moment. Did the club handle it in the right way? Do you have any regrets over that?
No, the only regret I have is I shouldn't have taken the Blackpool game on the Tuesday. My sister and when Elsie came on the Sunday, yeah, we'd gone to Mansfield on the Saturday, 1-0. It was a fantastic result, and we were mid-table and looking upwards. And then when it all happened, yeah, I shouldn't have taken the Blackpool game. No one knew what to do at that time. I thought it was the right thing to do, but I probably shouldn't have taken it. And that was the one I referred to as probably being on autopilot. And then I had a bit of time away, and you know, they got through at Barnsley on penalties in the cup, and then lost to Leyton Orient. And the game I returned for was Birmingham. So a strange time. No one knows. Similar to COVID, no one knows when when things happen out of the blue, how to react and how to respond. Would you like more support in certain moments from certain people at the club? Of course, but the main thing is getting a team that functions on the pitch, and a lot of things happen behind the scenes, not just around that time, but leading up to that season, involving staff and players at that football club. It was a very difficult club to manage. So yeah, when I lost my job after we got beat at Birmingham, who were the record team in the league that season, broke all the records. We got beat 2-0. A lot of players, teams would have taken 2-0 away at Birmingham, but wasn't to be. And the biggest thing is not getting the opportunity to improve a team, especially when you get sacked going in December, and then January's around the corner. And the irony is that they ended up signing players who I wanted to sign in the previous window in January. So that's the way it is. But like I say, an incredible learning curve.
When you are a lower team in the English football pyramid, you often have to play the preliminary rounds of the games, so EFL Cup, FA Cup, and then obviously your league fixtures as well. Do you enjoy those games? Because I know for the big sides, when you do end up playing, aside from the National League, League One, League Two, it could be a walk in the park. But for you, it's the potential to reach the fourth, fifth round of the FA Cup. And does that get you excited, or is the league just your main focus?
Yeah, no, the cups are massive. Fortunately, you do feel that in the English pyramid, in the English system, the cups haven't got the same feel as what they used to have. When I was growing up, the FA Cup was as big as the league, if not bigger. FA Cup final day was huge. It was incredible. But now, with no replays up until a certain point in the competition, it's lost its feel for me, and maybe the League Cup or the Carabao Cup, the EFL Cup, whatever it was called or is called. Yeah, those leagues aren't, those competitions aren't treated the same, and you see a lot of upsets now because teams from higher levels don't play the same strength of team because the league campaign is more important for them. So it's a real shame because I think that's what a certain age of supporter will always refer to as the best days of their lives. Cup runs and cup games, and I was there when United drew against Palace 3-3 and then beating 1-0, and Lee Martin scored that goal from left back. And yeah, I can picture those times as a kid growing up, watching United win at Wembley on numerous occasions in the FA Cup and the League Cup. Great memories, and for any supporter, that's what you remember. But I suppose there's more finance now in the league campaign, and that's maybe a bigger judgment as a manager. So, but certainly as a lower league club, you prioritise those competitions because financially you can get a big windfall. You've just seen it with Exeter City against Man City. Hopefully the finances they get from that will keep that club going.
In terms of you now, obviously you've been at the game for a couple months now, nearly a year. Well, just over a year actually. So what's it been like for you at home with family? And I suppose you've been maybe interviewed, been interested by some clubs. But what's it been like for you in these last few months? And what's the future going to be like for you?
Yeah, it's been great first and foremost because we welcomed our third child, Connor, in August. So to spend time with my young family has been brilliant, and I might not get that time back. And my wife, to support my wife as well. We've moved back to Sheffield last March, so making a home, and hopefully a home we can stay in for a longer period of time, is something we're looking forward to. But then you do want to be back out there working, and we can all go and watch games and go on study visits and watch clubs train. But the crux of the matter is we want to be working with our own players and with our own ideas and implementing them. And you go through interview processes, you meet people, you get a feel for opportunities. Some you get offered a job, some you don't, and there's disappointment. I'm at that point now where if I don't get a job I go for, interview for, then great, I get to spend more time with my family. But I know I want to be working, so I'm hungry for that next opportunity. And when it comes, I've got a clear mindset towards it.
Obviously, it's January. There's always turmoil with clubs and managers. Is there a chance you're in management by the end of the season?
I hope so. I certainly came close in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, like you say, January is that time where decisions are made, and then there's always that point 2 months out from the end of the season where more decisions are made. So I'd like to think I'll get an opportunity this season. I need to be working financially as much as anything else. I've got a young family to support. So yeah, I need to be working. I want to be working. So hopefully that opportunity comes sooner rather than later.
And when it does, I'll be there, hopefully supporting you guys. Hopefully it's not too far up north because I'm based near London. So hopefully you'll have to come down here and hopefully I can support you in the team.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be brilliant. You'd be always welcome.
Thank you very much. So last thing that I wanted to ask you was going abroad. Would you ever consider going abroad? Because I know you mentioned Scotland before, a young family. I think I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, I would consider it. Look, I'd love to experience other leagues than the English leagues, but you caveat that with what that opportunity would look like, because there's a lot of leagues internationally where you don't know the level, you don't know the players, you don't know the standard. I'm very familiar with English lower league football, and the Scottish Premier League ain't that much different to the Championship or League One or League Two. So you're familiar with that and the styles and ultimately what will bring you success. Whereas if you go abroad, then you're a little bit blind. You're in with a little bit of unknown as to what's to come. But it's certainly something myself and my wife and the family have spoke about. Unfortunately, probably my name in football isn't quite big enough to get those opportunities. Ex-internationals or ex-Premier League players or managers who've worked in the Premier League will always be not given but linked with great opportunities. I probably have to get my remit going and my reputation going a little bit stronger to get linked elsewhere and in other countries. But it's certainly something I'm always open to, because as a coach, when I do retire, as a manager, when I do retire, I don't want it to be just England. I want success to be in England, because I do first and foremost, but you want to experience everything. And I've experienced Championship as a player and as a manager at the highest level that I've worked at, but I'd love to get to the Premier League, but I'd also love to work abroad as well.
This is my last question. Obviously, England are heading into a World Cup year. We are in the World Cup year. Firstly, are you heading out to America? And secondly, who is bringing the World Cup home?
I'm not going out there. I'm not planning to go out there as yet. I think we've got a real chance. I do. I think we've finally got a manager who he's doing it his way. He's got a clear identity. He's very quite brash at times in terms of his approach, but he's got no place for arrogance or egos elsewhere. He'll pick the team he wants to pick. He'll do it his way, and I think that actually gives us the best chance. We're probably another centre half, possibly a goalkeeper, and a left full back away from being real contenders. We're just a little bit short in those departments, but from what I've seen, and it's only limited knowledge, I've not seen other international teams look outstanding. Sometimes, you look at some tournaments and you think Germany or Spain or Brazil, Argentina, you look like that they are firing on all cylinders. From what I've seen, and you'd probably include France in this and in Italy as well, is there's no one else who is really sort of making a statement saying we're going there to win it. I think England are probably one of 4 or 5 teams, and obviously big nations, who've got a real chance. But then you need luck on your side. You need people to stay fit. You need people to be in form at the right time. Heat will play its part, of course it will. The luck of the draw, moments in games, decisions. I think we've got a real chance, and I think it'll be a one tournament moment, because I don't think Tuchel will be there after this tournament. I'm a United fan. I'd love him to be at United after the World Cup. But imagine if he came there as a World Cup winner.
Well, I have to say, we're the only people that agree on the fact that he will not be here after at the World Cup. People seem to think he'll be Gareth Southgate and stay for 8 or 9
No.
years. It will not happen. But Matthew, what an absolute pleasure it's been. I really, really appreciate you joining me, speaking about the Championship, Bristol, so many great clubs and a great career. So thank you very much for joining me and all the best for the future.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.